What happens when a billionaire walks into a courtroom believing money can buy anything, including justice itself? What you're about to witness will restore your faith in the system. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button, because stories like this don't just entertain, they remind us why integrity still matters. This isn't just another courtroom drama. This is the day Marcus Holloway, CEO of Holloway Luxury Automotive, learned that some things in life cannot be purchased, manipulated, or intimidated into submission. And if you've ever felt powerless against someone who thought their wealth made them untouchable, drop a comment below telling us your story, because what happened in Courtroom 3B on October 17, 2023 will leave you speechless. The morning started like any other Tuesday in Providence, Rhode Island. Judge Frank Caprio, the 77-year-old municipal court judge beloved by millions for his compassion and wisdom, arrived at his chambers at 6:45 a.m., as he had for over 3 decades. He wore his signature black robe, his reading glasses perched on his nose, reviewing the day's docket with his usual meticulous attention. Traffic violations mostly. A few parking disputes. Standard municipal court fare. Nothing prepared him for what was about to unfold. Nothing prepared anyone in that building for Marcus Holloway. Marcus Holloway wasn't just wealthy. At 42 years old, he had built an empire selling luxury vehicles to the ultra-rich, with dealerships in 15 states and a personal net worth estimated at $3.7 billion. He drove a custom Bugatti Chiron worth $4.2 million. He wore a Patek Philippe Grand Complications watch worth $800,000. His suit, a bespoke Tom Ford creation, cost more than most people's monthly rent. And he knew it. He carried his wealth like a weapon, wielding it in every interaction, every negotiation, every moment of his carefully curated existence. The case that brought Marcus to Judge Caprio's courtroom seemed almost trivial at first glance. Case number MC 202308847. A traffic violation. Reckless driving. But like an iceberg, the surface barely hinted at what lay beneath. Share this video with someone who needs to see that wealth doesn't equal power, because what Judge Caprio did next will be talked about for generations. 3 weeks earlier, on September 26, 2023, Marcus had been driving through the historic College Hill neighborhood of Providence. It was 2:15 pages M on a Wednesday afternoon. School had just let out from St. Sebastian's Elementary, and children flooded the sidewalks, their backpacks bouncing, their laughter filling the crisp autumn air. The speed limit on Benefit Street was 20 miles per hour, clearly posted, designed to protect the families who lived in this residential area. Marcus was going 63. His Bugatti screamed down the narrow street, the engine roaring like a caged animal. Witnesses would later describe the sound as terrifying, unnatural in that quiet neighborhood. 8-year-old Emma Rodriguez was crossing at the designated crosswalk with her grandmother, Sofia Rodriguez, a 71-year-old retired teacher who had lived in Providence her entire life. They had just picked up Emma's younger brother, 5-year-old Lucas, from kindergarten. Lucas was holding his grandmother's hand on one side, clutching his favorite blue dinosaur backpack with the other. Emma skipped ahead slightly, excited to get home and show her grandmother the gold star she'd earned in reading class. The Bugatti came around the corner. Officer Daniel Prescott, a 15-year veteran of the Providence Police Department, was conducting routine speed enforcement 2 blocks away. His radar clocked Marcus at 63 miles per hour. He immediately activated his lights and siren, but Marcus didn't stop. He swerved. Hard. The tires screamed. The car fishtailed. And in that split second, everything changed. Sophia saw the car coming. She yanked both children backward with strength she didn't know she possessed. Emma stumbled. Lucas screamed. The Bugatti missed Emma by 8 inches. 8 inches between a normal afternoon and a funeral. The car mounted the curb, shattering a vintage street lamp that had stood there since 1924. Glass exploded across the sidewalk. Sophia fell backward, shielding both children with her body. Lucas's dinosaur backpack went flying, landing in the street, run over by the Bugatti's rear tire. Marcus didn't stop. He accelerated, running the stop sign at the next intersection, nearly colliding with a delivery truck. Officer Prescott pursued him for 7 more blocks before Marcus finally pulled over, not out of compliance, but because traffic had trapped him at a red light he couldn't run. When Officer Prescott approached the vehicle, weapon drawn, hands shaking from the adrenaline of what he'd just witnessed, Marcus lowered his window exactly 3 inches. "Do you know who I am?" Those were Marcus's first words. Not an apology, not concern for the family he'd nearly killed. Just that question, dripping with entitlement and arrogance. Officer Prescott's body camera captured everything. Every word, every sneer, every calculated display of contempt. If you believe accountability matters regardless of bank account balance, hit that like button right now, because what happened next will make your blood boil before it makes you believe in justice again. "Step out of the vehicle, sir," Officer Prescott said, his voice remarkably steady despite the situation. "I don't think so," Marcus replied, his tone casual, almost amused. "I'm late for a meeting. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to write whatever little ticket you need to write, and I'm going to pay it. That's how this works." "Sir, you were traveling 63 miles per hour in a 20-mile-per-hour zone. You nearly struck 3 pedestrians, including 2 children. You've fled the scene. You're going to need to step out of the vehicle right now." Marcus laughed, actually laughed. The sound was cold, mechanical. The laugh of someone who had never faced real consequences for anything. "Officer Prescott," he said, reading the nameplate. "I employ 237 people in this state. I pay more in taxes than you'll make in your entire career. Now, I'm going to give you a choice. Write your ticket, let me leave, and we both go on with our lives. Or make this difficult, and I promise you, I will own your career by Friday." The body camera captured Officer Prescott's jaw tightening, but his professionalism never wavered. "Step out of the vehicle. Now. This is your final warning." Marcus complied, but only in the technical sense. He emerged from the Bugatti like a king, being inconvenienced by peasants. His movements deliberately slow, his expression radiating disdain. He was 6'2", with the kind of artificial tan that came from private resort vacations, perfectly styled salt and pepper hair, and teeth so white they looked unnatural. His cologne probably cost more than Officer Prescott's monthly car payment. The field sobriety test was administered. Marcus passed, but barely, his arrogance making him careless. He wasn't drunk. He was just convinced the rules didn't apply to him. Officer Prescott issued citations for reckless driving, excessive speeding, fleeing an officer, and reckless endangerment. Marcus took the tickets without looking at them, stuffed them in his Tom Ford suit pocket like trash, and said 5 words that would seal his fate. "See you never, Officer Nobody." He drove away, going exactly the speed limit, knowing he was still being watched. Officer Prescott stood on that sidewalk, his hands still shaking, thinking about Emma Rodriguez and how close he'd come to investigating a child's death instead of writing traffic citations. He returned to the scene. Sofia Rodriguez was still there, sitting on the curb, both children pressed against her. Emma was crying. Lucas wouldn't let go of his grandmother. The dinosaur backpack was a flattened piece of blue fabric in the street. Officer Prescott knelt beside them. "Are you all okay? Do you need medical attention?" Quote. Sophia looked at him with eyes that had seen too much in her 71 years but had never seen anything like this. "We're alive," she whispered. "That's what matters. But, officer, that man, he didn't even slow down. He looked right at us and didn't even try to stop. My grandbabies." Her voice broke. Officer Prescott took detailed statements. He documented everything. He collected the names of 6 witnesses who had seen the entire incident. He photographed the destroyed street lamp, the skid marks, the flattened backpack. He requested the city's traffic camera footage. And he filed a report that was 13 pages long, single-spaced, because he knew this case mattered. He knew that if he didn't document every single detail, someone with Marcus Holloway's resources would make it disappear. That night, Officer Prescott went home to his wife, Detective Sarah Prescott, and told her everything. She held him while he cried, something he hadn't done since his rookie year when he'd responded to his first fatal accident involving a child. "I thought I was going to watch those kids die," he said, "and that man, Sarah, he didn't care, not even a little bit." Quote. The case was assigned a court date, October 17, 2023. 9 a.m. Courtroom 3B. Judge Frank Caprio presiding. Marcus's attorney, Gerald Blackstone, from the white shoe law firm of Blackstone Pearson Associates, immediately filed motions to dismiss. Insufficient evidence, improper procedure, violation of client's rights. Every legal maneuver in the book designed to make the case go away before it ever reached a courtroom. Every motion was denied. Drop a comment if you've ever felt like the system protects the wealthy, and tell us how this story makes you feel, because we're about to witness something extraordinary. Judge Caprio reviewed the case file 3 times. He watched the body camera footage twice. He read Officer Prescott's report from beginning to end, noting the officer's careful documentation, his emotional restraint, his clear concern for the victims. He reviewed the traffic camera footage that showed Marcus's Bugatti screaming down Benefit Street, the swerve, the near miss, the destroyed street lamp. He looked at the photographs of Emma, Lucas, and Sophia taken that day, the fear in their eyes, the grandmother's protective embrace, the flattened dinosaur backpack. Judge Caprio had presided over thousands of cases. He had seen humanity at its best and worst. He was known for his compassion, for his willingness to reduce fines for struggling families, for his understanding that people make mistakes. But he was also known for something else, his absolute intolerance for those who used wealth and power to escape accountability. And he recognized immediately what Marcus Holloway represented. October 17th arrived. The courtroom filled early. Word had spread through the courthouse about this case. Court officers, clerks, attorneys waiting for other hearings. They all found reasons to be in courtroom 3B that morning. Sophia Rodriguez was there, sitting in the second row with Emma and Lucas. The children had missed school to attend. Sophia wanted them to see that justice could prevail, that the system could work, even against someone like Marcus Holloway. Officer Prescott sat in the front row in full uniform, his testimony prepared, his evidence organized, his resolve absolute. At 8:57 a.m., Marcus Holloway arrived. He strode into the courtroom like he owned it, and in his mind, he probably believed he did. Gerald Blackstone walked beside him, carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Marcus surveyed the courtroom with barely concealed contempt. He saw Sophia and the children, and didn't even register recognition. They were scenery to him. Obstacles he'd successfully avoided, nothing more. Judge Caprio entered at precisely 9 a.m. "All rise," the bailiff announced. Everyone stood. Judge Caprio took his seat, arranged his papers, and looked directly at Marcus Holloway. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Case number MC 202308847, Judge Caprio said. "The State of Rhode Island versus Marcus Nathaniel Holloway. Charges of reckless driving, excessive speeding, fleeing an officer, and reckless endangerment. Mr. Holloway, you're represented by counsel?" Quote. "I am, Your Honor," Gerald Blackstone said, standing. Gerald Blackstone appearing on behalf of Mr. Holloway. "Your Honor, if I may address the court." "You may not," Judge Caprio said calmly. "Not yet." "Mr. Holloway, please stand." Marcus stood, but the way he did it communicated everything. Slow, deliberate, inconvenienced. He buttoned his suit jacket with practiced precision, adjusted his $800,000 watch, and fixed Judge Caprio with a look that said this was all beneath him. "Mr. Holloway, do you understand the charges against you?" Quote, "I understand that I'm here for a traffic ticket," Marcus said, his voice smooth, confident, dismissive. "Which seems like a tremendous waste of everyone's time, particularly mine." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Judge Caprio's expression didn't change, but everyone who knew him recognized the subtle shift in his posture. He leaned forward slightly. His eyes, Kind and grandfatherly in so many viral videos where he'd helped struggling families, now held something different, something harder. A traffic ticket, Judge Caprio repeated. Is that how you characterize nearly killing 3 people, including 2 young children? Quote, Your Honor, Gerald Blackstone interjected, my client disputes the characterization of events. The police report is based on exaggerated witness testimony and… Counselor, I've reviewed the body camera footage, the traffic camera footage, and the statements from 8 independent witnesses. I'm going to ask you to sit down now. Gerald Blackstone sat down, his confidence visibly shaken. This wasn't going according to plan. In his experience, judges were deferential to clients like Marcus Holloway. Judges understood that men with resources had options, that prolonged legal battles were expensive for the court system, that plea deals were efficient. Judge Caprio clearly didn't care about any of that. Mr. Holloway, Judge Caprio continued, on September 26th of this year, at approximately 2:15 pages M, you were driving your vehicle, a Bugatti Chiron, down Benefit Street in Providence. Is that correct? Quote, I was driving in that area, yes. At what speed? Quote. Marcus shrugged, the gesture infuriatingly casual. The speed I felt was appropriate for conditions. Quote, the speed limit on Benefit Street is 20 miles per hour. You were clocked at 63. That's more than 3 times the posted limit in a school zone immediately after dismissal. You consider that appropriate? Quote, Your Honor, I'm an experienced driver with advanced training. I've completed high-performance driving courses at 3 different tracks. I had complete control of my vehicle at all times. You had such complete control that you mounted a curb, destroyed public property, and came within inches of striking 3 pedestrians. That's an exaggeration. I saw the pedestrians. I swerved to avoid them. My actions actually prevented an accident. The audacity of that statement sucked the air out of the room. Sofia Rodriguez made a small sound, something between a gasp and a sob. Emma pressed against her grandmother's side. Judge Caprio's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. If you're watching this and thinking this can't be real, that no one is this arrogant, stick with us, because the next 10 minutes of this hearing became the most watched courtroom footage of 2023. Make sure you're subscribed, because we break down real cases that restore faith in justice. Mr. Holloway, let me make sure I understand your position, Judge Caprio said, his voice dangerously quiet. You believe that traveling at 3 times the speed limit in a school zone, causing multiple near-miss incidents, fleeing from a police officer, and showing 0 remorse demonstrates responsible behavior. Quote, Your Honor, with all due respect, I think this is being blown out of proportion. No one was hurt. No property damage except a street lamp, which I'm happy to pay for. This is exactly the kind of case that should be resolved with a fine and everyone moves on. I'm a businessman. I understand how things work. Let's be practical here. Practical, Judge Caprio repeated. The word hung in the air like smoke. Tell me, Mr. Holloway, what do you do for a living? Quote, I'm the CEO and founder of Holloway Luxury Automotive. We're the premier. You sell cars. We provide luxury vehicles to discerning clients who… You sell cars. Judge Caprio repeated, his tone making it clear he wouldn't tolerate the marketing speech. And you've been successful. Your net worth is considerable. Marcus smiled, apparently interpreting this as acknowledgement of his importance. I've been very fortunate, yes. And you believe that your financial success entitles you to different treatment under the law? Quote, I believe that my financial success reflects my capabilities and judgment, Your Honor. I employ hundreds of people. I contribute millions in taxes. I'm not some reckless teenager. I'm a responsible adult who had a minor traffic incident blown out of proportion by… By whom, Mr. Holloway? By the officer who witnessed you nearly kill 3 people? By the grandmother who had to throw herself and her grandchildren out of your path? By the 8-year-old girl who now has nightmares about blue cars? Quote, Marcus's expression flickered for just a moment, not with remorse, but with irritation that his narrative wasn't being accepted. Your Honor, I think we're getting emotional here when we should be focusing on the facts. The facts are that no one was injured, no significant property was damaged, and I have no prior record. This is clearly a situation that warrants a fine, maybe some community service, and we all move on." "Move on," Judge Caprio said. He looked down at his papers for a long moment. The courtroom was absolutely silent. You could hear the clock on the wall ticking. You could hear people breathing. When Judge Caprio looked back up, something in his expression had shifted. This was no longer just a hearing. This was something else entirely. "Officer Prescott, please approach," Judge Caprio said. Officer Prescott stood, walked to the witness stand, and was sworn in. His testimony was clear, detailed, and devastating. He described the speed, the swerve, the near miss, the destroyed property. He described Marcus's attitude during the stop. He played portions of the body camera footage, including the moment Marcus said, "See you never, Officer Nobody." "Officer Prescott, in your 15 years of law enforcement, how many times have you witnessed a near miss of this severity?" Judge Caprio asked. "3 times, Your Honor. The other 2 resulted in fatal accidents despite the officers' best efforts to intervene. This is the first time the pedestrian survived. And in those fatal accidents, what were the speeds of the vehicles involved?" Quote, 47 miles per hour in a 25 zone and 53 in a 30 zone, both slower than Mr. Holloway was traveling. The mathematics of that statement settled over the courtroom like a weight. Marcus shifted in his seat, his first sign of discomfort. Gerald Blackstone scribbled notes furiously, looking for angles, looking for procedural errors, looking for anything that could mitigate what was happening. "Officer Prescott, what was the defendant's demeanor during the traffic stop?" Quote, "Contemptuous, Your Honor. He made it clear that he believed his wealth and position exempted him from the law. He threatened my career. He refused to show any concern for the family he'd endangered. He treated the entire situation as an inconvenience rather than the serious matter it was." "Thank you, officer. Mrs. Rodriguez, would you please approach?" Quote, Sophia Rodriguez stood slowly, her hands shaking. Emma held one hand, Lucas the other. They walked with her to the witness stand, not willing to let go. Judge Caprio's expression softened just slightly when he saw the children's fear. "Mrs. Rodriguez, I know this is difficult. Thank you for being here. Can you tell the court in your own words what happened on September 26th? Quote, Sophia's voice was quiet but steady. She had been a teacher for 43 years. She knew how to speak clearly, how to make herself heard. She described the afternoon in detail, picking up Lucas from kindergarten, Emma's gold star in reading, the crosswalk, the sound of the engine. The moment she realized the car wasn't going to stop, "I thought we were going to die," she said simply. "I looked at that car coming toward us, and I thought these babies were going to die in front of me, and there was nothing I could do except try to pull them back." I saw the driver's face through the windshield. He was looking right at us, right at Emma's face. And he didn't slow down. He swerved at the last second, but he didn't slow down. "How have the children been since that day?" Quote, Sophia's composure cracked. Tears streamed down her face. "Emma won't cross streets anymore. She panics if we get near a road. Lucas won't let go of my hand when we're outside. He cries every time he hears a car engine. They're afraid all the time now. And that man, he's sitting there like none of this matters, like we're nothing. Drop a comment telling us about a time when someone's recklessness changed your life. Because what Judge Caprio does next is why millions of people trust him to deliver real justice." Judge Caprio looked at Marcus Holloway, who was checking his watch. Actually, checking his watch while a grandmother testified about his near murder of her grandchildren. "Mr. Holloway, do you have somewhere you need to be?" Quote, Marcus looked up, caught but unapologetic. "Your Honor, I do have a business to run. I assumed this would be brief." "You assumed incorrectly." "Mrs. Rodriguez, thank you for your testimony. You and the children may return to your seats." Sophia walked back to the gallery, Emma and Lucas still clutching her hands. As she passed Marcus's table, she looked directly at him, searching for some sign of humanity, some indication that he understood what he'd done. Marcus looked away, scrolling through his phone under the table. "Mr. Holloway, please stand," Judge Caprio said. Marcus stood, his irritation now obvious. This was taking too long. This was beneath him. His body language screamed his impatience. "Mr. Holloway, I've presided over this court for more than 30 years. I've seen thousands of cases. I've seen people make terrible mistakes and show genuine remorse. I've seen people struggle with circumstances beyond their control. I've seen poverty, desperation, mental illness, addiction. I've seen people at their lowest who still managed to show basic human decency and accountability. And then there's you." Marcus's expression shifted to something like surprise. He wasn't used to being spoken to this way. Certainly not by a municipal court judge he probably viewed as little more than a bureaucrat. "You come into my courtroom having nearly killed 3 people, and you treat it like a parking ticket. You show no remorse, no accountability, no recognition of the harm you caused. You check your watch while a grandmother testifies about the trauma you inflicted on her family. You believe that your wealth makes you special, that it exempts you from the basic responsibilities we all share to not endanger each other's lives." "Your Honor, I'm not finished." Judge Caprio's voice wasn't loud, but it cut through Marcus's attempted interruption like a blade. "You told Officer Prescott that you own people, that your wealth gives you power over others. You threatened his career. You dismissed his authority. You treated him like he was beneath you because he wears a uniform and earns a public servant's salary. And I suspect you believe you can do the same to me." Marcus said nothing, but his jaw tightened. His mask was slipping. "Let me be very clear about something, Mr. Holloway. In this courtroom, I don't care about your net worth. I don't care about your business. I don't care about how many people you employ or how much you pay in taxes. Those things might matter in your world, but they mean nothing here. Here, you're just a man who endangered 3 lives and feels entitled to walk away without consequences. And that ends today." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Gerald Blackstone stood. "Your Honor, if the court is considering—" "Sit down, counselor." Gerald sat. Even he recognized that any intervention right now would only make things worse. Judge Caprio continued, his gaze never leaving Marcus. "You're going to learn something today that apparently no one in your privileged life has ever taught you. Actions have consequences. Wealth doesn't exempt you from responsibility. And when you endanger innocent lives, particularly children, society demands accountability, not suggestions, not recommendations, accountability." Marcus's face was reddening now, his carefully maintained composure cracking. "Your Honor, this is ridiculous. I'm being persecuted because I'm successful. This is justice, Mr. Holloway. Perhaps the first time you've encountered it." Quote. And then Judge Caprio did something that no one expected. He stood up. In 32 years on the bench, courthouse staff would later say they'd never seen him stand during a hearing. But he stood now, looking down at Marcus Holloway from his elevated position, and the gesture transformed the moment from a routine hearing into something far more significant. "On the charge of reckless driving, I find you guilty. On the charge of excessive speeding in a school zone, I find you guilty. On the charge of fleeing a police officer, I find you guilty. On the charge of reckless endangerment, I find you guilty on 3 counts. Mr. Holloway, you are hereby sentenced to 90 days in the adult correctional institutions, suspended pending completion of 200 hours of community service. You will complete this service at St. Sebastian's Elementary School, where you will see every single day the children you nearly killed and the community you endangered. You will serve as a crossing guard at the exact intersection where your crime occurred for 200 hours. You will complete an advanced defensive driving course, not at some luxury track where you play with expensive toys, but through the state's public safety program. Your driver's license is suspended for 1 year. You will pay a fine of $50,000, which will be donated to traffic safety programs in Providence schools. And you will write a personal letter of apology to Emma Rodriguez, Lucas Rodriguez, and Sofia Rodriguez to be reviewed and approved by this court before your sentence is considered complete." The courtroom exploded. Gasps, whispers. A few people actually applauding before the bailiff restored order. Marcus stood frozen, his face cycling through shock, disbelief, and fury. Gerald Blackstone was on his feet, sputtering objections. "Your Honor, this sentence is excessive, punitive, and is within my discretion, Counselor. Would you like me to unsuspend the 90 days?" Quote. Gerald Blackstone shut up immediately. Marcus found his voice finally, and when he spoke, every ounce of his arrogance, his entitlement, his contempt, came flooding out in 3 words that would be replayed millions of times online. "I own you." The courtroom went dead silent. Even the bailiff, a 30-year veteran who had seen everything, looked shocked. Marcus Holloway, standing in a courtroom, having just been sentenced, looked Judge Frank Caprio directly in the eye and said, "I own you." Quote. "I own you," Marcus repeated, his voice rising. "You think you can do this to me? Do you have any idea who I am? I own property in 8 states. I donate to politicians. I know the governor personally. I will have your job. I will have your pension. I will have everything you've worked for, and you'll be lucky if I don't sue you into oblivion for judicial misconduct. You can't talk to me like I'm some common criminal. I own you." If you're watching this thinking someone finally put an entitled billionaire in his place, hit that like button and share this with everyone who needs to see that justice still exists, because what happened next will give you chills. Judge Caprio didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't show even a flicker of intimidation or anger. He simply looked at Marcus Holloway with something that might have been pity if it weren't mixed with such absolute certainty. "No, Mr. Holloway," Judge Caprio said quietly, and the softness of his voice made his words somehow more powerful. "You don't own me. You don't own this courtroom. You don't own justice. You don't own the law. You've spent your entire life believing that wealth equals power, that money can purchase immunity from consequences. And maybe in your business dealings, in your social circles, among the people who depend on your money and approval, that's true. But not here. Not today. Not ever in my courtroom." He paused, letting the words settle, letting Marcus absorb them. "You know what you do own, Mr. Holloway? You own your choices. You owned the choice to drive 63 miles per hour in a school zone. You owned the choice to flee from police. You owned the choice to show no remorse, no accountability, no basic human decency in the face of the harm you caused. Those are yours. Those will always be yours. And now you own something else, the consequences." Marcus was shaking now, not with fear, but with rage. Pure, undiluted rage that someone dared speak to him this way, dared hold him accountable, dared treat him like everyone else. "This isn't over," he hissed. "I will appeal this. I will have you removed from the bench. I will." "Bailiff," Judge Caprio said calmly, "Mr. Holloway seems to be threatening the court. Please note that in the record." "Mr. Holloway, you now have a choice to make, and I suggest you make it very carefully. You can accept this sentence, complete it with whatever shred of dignity you have left, and perhaps learn something about accountability and humility. Or you can continue down this path, and I will unsuspend your 90-day sentence effective immediately. You'll be taken into custody right now, and you can spend the next 3 months contemplating whether your wealth keeps you warm in a cell. Which will it be?" Quote. The courtroom held its collective breath. This was the moment. This was where Marcus Holloway either recognized reality or destroyed himself further. Gerald Blackstone was tugging at his client's sleeve, whispering urgently. For a long moment, Marcus said nothing, his jaw working, his hands clenched into fists. Then something extraordinary happened. Something no one expected. Marcus's phone rang. In the absolute silence of the courtroom, the ringtone blared, some generic business tone. Marcus instinctively reached for it. Judge Caprio's voice cut through the motion. "If you answer that phone, Mr. Holloway, you'll be held in contempt, and your sentence will be executed immediately." Marcus's hand froze. He looked at the phone. He looked at Judge Caprio. And in that moment, the reality of his situation finally penetrated his armor of arrogance. He was not in control. His money didn't matter. His connections didn't matter. His threats didn't matter. He was standing in a courtroom, having been found guilty, facing real consequences for the first time in his adult life, and there was no checkbook large enough to make it go away. His hand dropped. The phone kept ringing, then fell silent. And in that silence, something in Marcus Holloway cracked. "I accept the sentence," he said, the words barely audible. "I'm sorry, I didn't hear you," Judge Caprio said. "I accept the sentence, Your Honor." Louder now, but hollow, defeated. "You'll complete every hour of community service. You'll write the letters of apology. You'll attend the safety course. You'll pay the fine. And if I hear that you've failed to complete any portion of this sentence with absolute commitment, you'll serve every day of that 90-day suspension. Am I clear?" Quote, "Yes, Your Honor." Court is adjourned. The gavel came down. The sound echoed through courtroom 3B like a gunshot, final and absolute. Marcus stood there for a moment, looking lost, looking like a man whose entire worldview had just shattered. Gerald Blackstone was gathering papers, already planning appeals that they both knew wouldn't go anywhere. Officer Prescott sat in the front row, his eyes closed, relief washing over his face. Sofia Rodriguez was crying, but not from fear this time. Emma and Lucas were looking up at her, confused but sensing that something important had happened. Marcus turned to leave, and as he did, he made eye contact with Sofia. Just for a second. And in that second, maybe, possibly, for the first time he saw her, saw the fear, saw the trauma, saw the humanity he'd dismissed and endangered. His step faltered. His expression flickered with something that might have been shame. He left the courtroom without another word. The video of the hearing was released the next day through the court's public records. Within 24 hours, it had been viewed 12 million times. Within a week, that number reached 43 million. "I own you" became a viral phrase used mockingly to describe entitled behavior. Judge Caprio's calm response became a rallying cry for accountability and justice. Think pieces were written. Legal experts weighed in. But the real story, the story beneath the viral moment, was what happened next. Share this video if you believe in second chances, but also real accountability, because the transformation that followed shocked everyone, including the judge. Marcus Holloway reported for his first day of community service at St. Sebastian's Elementary School on October 30th, 2023. He arrived at 7 a.m., dressed in the reflective vest and equipment provided by the school. He stood at the corner of Benefit Street and Angel Street, the exact location where he'd nearly killed 3 people 34 days earlier. The destroyed street lamp had been replaced with a new one, and a small plaque had been installed on it. "In gratitude for lives preserved," it read, a reminder that every moment matters. The crossing guard captain, a 62-year-old retired firefighter named Thomas Chen, explained Marcus's duties: stop traffic, escort children safely across the street, be visible, be alert, be responsible for their safety. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The first morning was brutal. Children and parents recognized Marcus from the viral video. Some parents pulled their children away from him. Some made comments, just loud enough for him to hear. "That's the man who almost killed those kids. They should have locked him up. 200 hours isn't enough." Marcus stood there, holding his stop sign, his face burning with shame and anger, and did his job. Emma Rodriguez arrived with her grandmother at 8:15 a.m. They approached the crosswalk. Emma froze when she saw Marcus. She remembered him, remembered the car, remembered the fear. Sofia held her granddaughter's hand tighter, and they stood on the curb, waiting, unsure what to do. Marcus saw them. He stepped forward with his stop sign, halted traffic, and created a safe path across the street. But he couldn't just let them pass. He lowered the sign slightly and looked at Sofia, really looked at her. "Mrs. Rodriguez," he said, his voice rough, "I know my apology means nothing right now. I know I have no right to ask anything from you. But I want you to know that I see you now. I see what I did. And I will spend every day of these 200 hours making sure no child ever feels the fear I caused Emma and Lucas to feel. I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry." Sofia studied him for a long moment. Emma pressed against her grandmother's side. Lucas, who wasn't there, probably hadn't been told that this was happening. Finally, Sofia nodded once, just a slight dip of her head, and walked Emma across the street. No forgiveness, not yet, but acknowledgement that he'd spoken. That scene repeated every morning and afternoon for weeks. Marcus stood at that corner in rain, in cold, in the early darkness of late autumn. He learned the children's names. He learned their routines. He began to see them not as obstacles or statistics, but as individuals. The shy boy who always walked alone. The girl with the pink backpack who sang to herself. The twins who held hands crossing the street. The kindergartner who was terrified of cars and needed extra reassurance. Around week 3, something shifted. A little boy named David, probably 6 years old, approached Marcus during the morning shift. "Are you the car man?" he asked with the blunt curiosity of children. "I am," Marcus admitted. "My dad says you were bad, but you're trying to be better. Is that true?" Quote, Marcus knelt down to David's eye level, something he would never have done 2 months ago. "Yes, I was very bad. I made a terrible choice that almost hurt people. And I'm trying to learn how to be better. I'm trying to understand why I was wrong." Quote, "Okay," David said, accepting this with a child's simple logic. "Can you help me cross? That truck is really big and it scares me." "Of course. That's my job. I won't let anything happen to you." Marcus stopped traffic, walked David across the street, and watched him run toward the school doors. When he returned to his post, Thomas Chen was watching him with an unreadable expression. "That's the first time you've talked to a kid like that," Thomas said. "I didn't know how before," Marcus admitted. "I didn't see them as people. I saw them as obstacles in my way. Things to avoid. I was so focused on where I was going that I never saw where I was." "You seeing things different now?" Quote, Marcus looked at the stream of children flowing into the school, each one someone's entire world, each one precious and irreplaceable. "I'm trying to," he said. That night, Marcus sat at his desk in his penthouse apartment, overlooking downtown Providence, and began writing letters. Not the court-ordered apologies. Those would come later. These were different. He wrote to Emma, explaining in simple terms that he was sorry, that he understood she was scared, that he was working every day to be someone who deserved her forgiveness, even though he knew he might never receive it. He wrote to Lucas, apologizing for destroying his dinosaur backpack and explaining that fear is real and valid, and it's okay to take time to feel safe again. He wrote to Sophia, thanking her for her strength, acknowledging the trauma he'd caused, and promising that he would never again be the person who dismissed other people's pain. But he also wrote letters to himself. Long, brutal, honest assessments of who he'd become. Somewhere in the pursuit of wealth and success, he'd lost basic humanity. He'd started measuring his worth by his net worth. He'd started believing that his achievements gave him privileges, that his intelligence and drive meant rules were suggestions. He'd surrounded himself with people who enabled that belief, who told him he was special, who never said no. The letters to himself filled a journal. He wrote about his childhood, about the father who valued money over everything, about learning to equate wealth with worth. He wrote about the first time someone had let him cut a line because of who he was, and how intoxicating that feeling was. He wrote about every moment someone had enabled his worst impulses, and he wrote about his own responsibility for choosing to become the person he'd become. Drop a comment and tell us if you think people like this can actually change, or if it's all performance, because what happened in month 2 will challenge your assumptions. Week 7 of his community service, late November, a freezing morning with sleet coming down. Marcus stood at his post, his reflective vest soaked, his hands numb despite the gloves. He'd been there since 6:45 a.m., arriving early as he now did every day. Most crossing guards wouldn't show up until 7:30 in weather like this. Marcus was there when the first child arrived, and he would be there when the last child left. A car came around the corner too fast. Not as fast as Marcus had been driving that day, but too fast for conditions. The driver was distracted, looking at something in the passenger seat. Marcus saw it happening in slow motion. The car, the slick road, the child stepping off the curb, a girl in a yellow raincoat who thought the crosswalk meant she was safe. Marcus moved without thinking. He lunged forward, his stop sign held high, his other arm extending toward the girl. "Stop!" he bellowed, his voice cutting through the sleet. The car slammed on its brakes, hydroplaning, sliding toward the crosswalk. Marcus grabbed the girl around the waist and threw both of them backward onto the sidewalk. They landed hard, Marcus taking the impact, the girl landing on top of him. The car slid through the crosswalk, missing where the girl had been standing by less than 3 feet, and came to rest halfway through the intersection. For a moment, there was absolute silence, except for the sleet and the girl crying. Then chaos. Parents running over. Thomas Chen on his radio calling for police. The driver, a young woman probably in her 20s, stumbling out of her car in shock, crying, apologizing. And Marcus, lying on the wet sidewalk, the girl in the yellow raincoat still in his arms, both of them safe. "You're okay," Marcus said softly to the girl, who he now recognized as Lily Chen, Thomas's granddaughter. "You're safe, I've got you." Lily was crying but nodding. The car was coming. The car was coming fast, like in Emma's story. "I know, but it didn't hit you. You're safe." Thomas Chen helped his granddaughter up, checked her over, then looked at Marcus with an expression that was complicated and raw. "You saved her life," Thomas said. "I stopped a child from being hit by a car," Marcus said, standing slowly, his back screaming in pain from the impact. "That's my job. That's what I should have been doing that day. That's what I should always have been doing." The police arrived, took statements, cited the young driver for distracted driving. Officer Prescott was among the responding officers. He and Marcus made eye contact. Officer Prescott nodded once. Not forgiveness, not friendship, but acknowledgement. That evening, Marcus returned to his apartment and couldn't stop shaking. Not from cold, not from pain. From the realization of how close Lily had come to being hit. From the understanding of what Sofia Rodriguez had felt that day, seeing her grandchildren in danger. From the visceral, physical knowledge of how fragile life was and how quickly it could be destroyed by carelessness and selfishness, he called Gerald Blackstone. "I want to withdraw any appeals we've filed." "Marcus, I really think we should." "Withdraw them, all of them. The sentence was appropriate." "More than appropriate. I deserved worse." "That's not legally advisable to say, even to your own attorney." "I don't care. Withdraw the appeals." Gerald sighed. "You're the client. I'll file the paperwork." Marcus then did something he hadn't done since he was a child. He called his mother. They hadn't spoken in 4 years, not since a fight about money, about priorities, about the man Marcus had become. His father had died 3 years ago, wealthy and bitter, never satisfied, never content. His mother had remarried, moved to Vermont, lived a quiet life working at a library. "Mom, it's Marcus." The silence on the other end was long. "Marcus, is something wrong?" Quote, "Everything is wrong. I'm wrong. I became dad. I became everything you warned me not to become. And I almost killed people. I nearly murdered 3 people, Mom, and I didn't even care until a judge forced me to see what I'd done." Quote, his mother listened as Marcus explained everything. The hearing, the sentence, the community service. Lily Chen. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. "Are you calling me because you want absolution?" she asked finally. "Or are you calling me because you genuinely want to change?" Quote, "I don't know, both. I need to change. I can't be this person anymore. But I don't know how. You and Dad split up because of this, because of what money did to him, what success did to him. How do I not end up like he did?" Quote, "You acknowledge it," she said. "You already took the first step by recognizing what you'd become. Your father never did. He died believing the world owed him something, that his wealth made him better than everyone else. You're scared. That's good. Fear means you still have a conscience. Hold on to that." They talked for 2 hours, the longest conversation they'd had in a decade. His mother told him about the library, about the community she'd built, about finding value in service rather than status. Marcus listened, really listened, perhaps for the first time in years. The next day, Marcus called a meeting with his executive team at Holloway Luxury Automotive. 12 people gathered in the conference room, expecting the usual agenda. Business performance, sales targets, market expansion. Instead, Marcus told them what had happened. All of it. The sentence. The community service. His reckoning with who he'd become. I built this company on the belief that excellence meant exclusivity. He said that our value came from being expensive, from serving only the wealthy, from creating a brand that said, if you can't afford us, you don't matter. And that philosophy, that belief system, it destroyed my humanity. It made me into someone who could nearly kill 3 people and feel nothing. So we're changing. The CFO, a man named Richard Preston who'd been with Marcus for 12 years, cleared his throat. Changing how? Quote, "We're launching a community initiative, Holloway Safe Streets. We're going to fund traffic safety programs in every city where we have a dealership. Driver education, crosswalk improvements, school zone enforcement. We're going to take 5% of our annual profit and invest it in making sure no one else does what I did." That's approximately $18 million, Richard said slowly. Yes, our shareholders. I'm the majority shareholder. This is happening. Anyone who has a problem with it can tender their resignation. No one did. The meeting continued for 3 hours, planning, organizing, figuring out logistics. Some people were skeptical. Some were supportive. Some were just trying to figure out if this was a publicity stunt or genuine change. Marcus didn't know how to convince them it was real, except to follow through. That afternoon, Marcus completed his court-ordered apology letters. He'd rewritten them 17 times, trying to find words that weren't trite, weren't self-serving, weren't empty. He finally settled on simple honesty. To Emma, he wrote about understanding fear, about acknowledging that his actions had stolen her sense of safety, about hoping that someday she could cross streets without terror. He included a promise that he was working every day to make streets safer for all children, so that his worst moment might prevent other children from experiencing what she had experienced. To Lucas, he wrote about the dinosaur backpack, about understanding that sometimes objects become important because they represent safety and comfort, about hoping Lucas could feel safe again. He included a gift certificate to the toy store, not to replace what was lost, but to acknowledge that some things mattered beyond their monetary value. To Sophia, he wrote the longest letter. He wrote about privilege, about how wealth had blinded him to humanity, about the shame he felt that it had taken a judge's sentence to make him see what should have been obvious. He wrote about standing at that corner every day, seeing the children she'd protected, understanding the weight of responsibility for other people's lives. He wrote about his mother, about his father, about the person he'd been and the person he was trying to become. And he wrote about gratitude, about thanking her for surviving, for protecting her grandchildren, for giving him the chance to learn what he should have known all along. He submitted the letters to Judge Caprio's clerk for review. 3 days later, he received a response. The letters were approved. They would be delivered to the Rodriguez family. Week 9 of community service. December now. Holiday decorations were going up around the school. Children were excited, chattering about Christmas and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and winter break. Marcus had been standing at his corner for 47 days straight, never missing a shift, arriving early, staying late. Sophia Rodriguez approached him one afternoon, alone. Emma and Lucas weren't with her. She stood on the sidewalk, studying him for a long moment while he held his stop sign, waiting for children to cross. "Your letter," she finally said. "My granddaughter read it," she cried. Not from fear this time. She cried because she said you sounded sad. Marcus didn't know what to say to that. "She asked me if people can change," Sophia continued. "If bad people can become good people." And I didn't know how to answer her. I've taught for 43 years. I've seen children change. I've seen them overcome terrible circumstances. But adults? I don't know. Can you change, Mr. Holloway? Quote, "I'm trying," Marcus said honestly. "I don't know if I can undo who I was. But I'm trying to become someone different, someone better, someone who sees people instead of obstacles." Quote. Sophia nodded slowly. "My Emma, she wants to forgive you. She has a good heart, too good sometimes, but she's afraid that if she forgives you, it means what you did was okay. I told her that forgiveness doesn't mean what you did was okay. It means she's choosing not to carry the fear and anger forever. But that's her choice to make when she's ready. Do you understand that? Quote, "Yes, ma'am. And you need to understand something else. You saved Lily Chen. Thomas told everyone what you did. That matters. That counts for something. But it doesn't erase what you did to my family. Both things are true. You did terrible harm, and you prevented terrible harm. You have to carry both of those truths." "I will." Sophia reached into her purse and pulled out a photograph. It showed Emma and Lucas with their new backpacks, standing in front of their house, smiling. The photo was recent. They got new backpacks. Lucas wanted a red one with rockets. He's starting to sleep through the night again. Emma is crossing streets if I'm holding her hand. They're healing, Mr. Holloway. Slowly. And part of that healing is knowing that you face consequences, that the system worked, that justice happened. So you finish your 200 hours. You do everything the judge ordered. Not because it makes things right, but because it's what you owe. "I will. I promise." Sophia nodded and walked away, leaving Marcus standing at his corner with a photograph of two children who were healing despite him, not because of him. He put the photo in his wallet, next to his driver's license that he couldn't use, and returned to his post. If you're still watching, if this story is impacting you, take a moment to subscribe and turn on notifications, because real stories of transformation and justice matter, and we need your support to keep sharing them. Christmas week arrived. The school held an assembly for the crossing guards and community volunteers, thanking them for their service. Marcus hadn't expected to be invited, but Thomas Chen told him he had to come. "You've been here every day for 2 months. You're part of the team now." Quote. The assembly was held in the school gymnasium, decorated with children's artwork and construction paper snowflakes. 200 students sat in rows on the floor. Parents lined the back wall. Marcus stood with the other crossing guards, feeling completely out of place in his expensive business casual clothes among people in uniforms and working-class attire. The principal, Dr. Michelle Foster, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, gave a speech about community, about safety, about the people who showed up every day to protect children. She thanked each crossing guard by name, sharing stories about their service. When she came to Marcus, she paused. Mr. Marcus Holloway has been serving as a crossing guard since late October. I think many of you know his story. Many of you questioned whether he belonged here. Some of you were angry that he was allowed near your children. Those feelings were valid and understandable. Marcus wanted to sink through the floor, but I want to share something you might not know. In the 2 months Mr. Holloway has been here, he has never missed a single shift. He has been here in rain, sleet, and snow. He arrives early and stays late. He has learned every child's name. Last month, he prevented a serious accident by pulling a child out of the path of a car. And last week, he did something else. Quote, Dr. Foster gestured, and a screen lowered behind her. A video began to play. It showed the intersection of Benefit Street and Angel Street. Marcus standing at his post, a child with a mobility device approaching the crosswalk, struggling with the uneven pavement. Marcus immediately leaving his post, helping the child navigate the curb, stopping traffic, ensuring the child got across safely, then returning to help the child navigate the curb on the other side. That child is my nephew, Dr. Foster said. He has cerebral palsy. That intersection is difficult for him. Every day Mr. Holloway helps him cross. Every single day. Not because it's required, not because anyone is watching, because it's the right thing to do. The video ended. Dr. Foster looked directly at Marcus. I don't know if you're seeking redemption, Mr. Holloway. I don't know if you can ever fully make up for the harm you caused. But I know that for 2 months, you've shown up. You've done the work. You've protected our children. And that matters. She began to clap. Slowly, others joined. Not everyone. Some parents kept their arms crossed, their expressions hard. Some children looked confused. But enough people clapped that the sound filled the gymnasium. Marcus stood there, his eyes burning, his throat tight, and nodded his thanks. After the assembly, Emma Rodriguez approached him. Sophia was with her, as was Lucas, who Marcus was seeing for the first time since the incident. Emma held a piece of construction paper, folded in half. A Christmas card, handmade. "We made you a card," Emma said quietly. She was still scared. Marcus could see it in the way she stood half behind her grandmother. But she was there, and she was talking to him. Marcus knelt down to be at her eye level. "Thank you, Emma. That's very kind. Grandma said you're learning to be better. Is that true?" Quote, "I'm trying very hard to be better." "Okay. My card says, 'Merry Christmas,' and I drew a picture of a crossing guard because you help kids cross the street now. That's your job." "It is. It's the most important job I've ever had." Emma nodded solemnly, handed him the card, and retreated to Sophia's side. Lucas didn't approach, but he watched Marcus with curious eyes, no longer filled with fear, just the normal caution of a 5-year-old meeting an adult. That night, Marcus put Emma's card on his refrigerator. A construction paper card worth nothing monetarily and worth more than anything he owned. He took a photo of it and sent it to his mother with a text. "I'm getting there." She responded, "Proud of you. Keep going." January arrived. Marcus completed his 160th hour of community service. 40 hours left. His defensive driving course was scheduled for mid-January, a week-long intensive program. The $50,000 fine had been paid. The Holloway Safe Streets initiative was launching in March, with programs already being developed in Providence, Boston, Hartford, and Newark. But something else was happening. Marcus was changing in ways that went beyond the court order. He'd started volunteering at Sofia Rodriguez's church, helping with their food pantry every Saturday. He'd enrolled in a community college course on social work, trying to understand systems of inequality and privilege that he'd benefited from without acknowledgement. He'd downsized his living situation, moving from his penthouse to a modest 2-bedroom apartment, donating the difference in rent to local schools. His executive team noticed. His friends noticed, the few friends he had left after the viral video. Anyway, some thought he was having a breakdown. Some thought it was a publicity stunt. Some just didn't know what to make of it. Marcus didn't care. For the first time in his adult life, he was measuring his days not by profit margins and business conquests, but by whether he'd made someone's life slightly better. Had he helped a child cross safely? Had he donated food to someone who needed it? Had he learned something that made him more aware of his own privilege and more committed to addressing inequality? His therapist, Dr. Rebecca Chen, who he'd started seeing in November, called it ego, death, and rebirth. "You built an identity around wealth and status," she explained during one session. That identity was shattered in Judge Caprio's courtroom. Now you're rebuilding, but you're doing it consciously this time, choosing values instead of just accumulating achievements. It's painful. It's supposed to be. "Will I ever stop feeling ashamed?" Marcus asked. "Maybe not completely, and maybe that's not a bad thing. Shame can be toxic if it's unproductive, but it can also be a moral compass if it's channeled properly. Your shame is reminding you never to become that person again. That's valuable." Final week of community service, January 23rd through January 27th, 2024. Marcus stood at his corner, watching children cross, helping them navigate icy patches, ensuring their safety. 195 hours completed. 5 to go. On the final day, Thomas Chen stood beside him. "You're almost done." Quote, "With the court order, yes. You planning to stop?" Quote. Marcus had been thinking about that question for weeks. The court order required 200 hours. He'd complete that today. He could walk away, never stand at this corner again, move on with his life. Or he could make a different choice. "I'd like to keep coming," Marcus said, "if that's okay with you and the school. Not every day. I still have a company to run, but maybe twice a week, if I'm allowed." Thomas studied him for a long moment. Why? Quote, "Because this is where I learned to see people. This is where I stopped being Marcus Holloway, Billionaire CEO, and became just Marcus, someone responsible for protecting children. I don't want to lose that. I don't want to forget what I learned here. Dr. Foster will need to approve it." Quote, "I understand." That afternoon, Marcus completed his 200th hour. Dr. Foster signed his completion paperwork, Thomas Chen shook his hand. Several children said goodbye, including Emma Rodriguez, who gave him a small wave as she left with her grandmother. Marcus stood at the corner after his shift was over, looking at the intersection where his old life had ended, and something new had begun. The new street lamp with its plaque, the crosswalk where Sophia had saved her grandchildren, the curb where he'd pulled Lily Chen to safety. All of it had meaning now in a way nothing in his previous life had meant anything. Judge Caprio's clerk called him the next day. Judge Caprio would like to see you. Tomorrow at 2 pages M, his chambers. Marcus arrived 15 minutes early, wearing a simple button-down shirt and khakis. No expensive suit, no luxury watch. He'd sold the Bugatti and donated the proceeds to traffic safety programs. He drove a 3-year-old Honda Accord now, the kind of car a normal person drove. Judge Caprio greeted him in chambers, gesturing to a chair. The room was modest, lined with law books and family photographs. Judge Caprio looked the same as he had that day in court, but his expression was different, less stern, curious perhaps. "Mr. Holloway," you completed your sentence. "Yes, Your Honor." "And you're continuing to volunteer at the school." "Twice a week, if they'll have me." Dr. Foster approved it. Quote. Judge Caprio nodded slowly. "Tell me something honestly. Is this real, or is this very elaborate impression management?" Quote. Marcus had known this question was coming. He'd asked it of himself 100 times. "I don't know anymore where performance ends and authenticity begins, Your Honor. I started the community service angry, resentful, convinced you'd overstepped. Then Lily Chen almost got hit by that car, and I saved her without thinking. In that moment, I wasn't performing. I was just protecting a child. And I realized that's who I wanted to be. Not Marcus Holloway, billionaire. Just Marcus, someone who shows up and does the right thing because it's right, not because someone's watching. That's not an answer. It's the only honest answer I have. I'm trying to be different. I'm trying to undo 42 years of valuing the wrong things. I don't know if I'll succeed. I might fail. I might revert to who I was. But I'm trying, and I'll keep trying." Judge Caprio was quiet for a moment, studying Marcus with those sharp, kind eyes that had seen through his arrogance that day in court. "Do you know why I gave you that sentence? It wasn't punishment, though everyone assumed it was. It was opportunity. I could have sent you to jail. I could have made an example of you. But I looked at you, and I saw someone who'd never learned basic lessons about humanity and responsibility. So I put you in a position where you couldn't avoid learning them. I made you responsible for the safety of the very people you'd endangered. And I watched to see what you'd do with that opportunity. And, quote, you did the work, you showed up, you changed. Maybe not completely, maybe not permanently. But you took the opportunity and used it. That's all anyone can ask." Marcus felt something release in his chest, some knot of tension he hadn't known he was carrying. Not absolution, not forgiveness, just acknowledgement that he'd done what was asked of him. "There's something else," Judge Caprio continued. He pulled out a folder. "I received a letter from Sophia Rodriguez. She wanted me to know that Emma's crossing streets on her own again. Lucas sleeps through the night. They're healing. She also wanted me to know that you've been helping at their church, that you've shown consistent commitment to change. She's not ready to forgive you, but she wanted you to know that she sees your efforts." Judge Caprio handed Marcus a copy of the letter. Marcus read it, his eyes burning. Sophia's handwriting was precise, teacher perfect. She described watching Marcus at the corner, seeing him help her nephew with cerebral palsy, witnessing his patience with children. She wrote about Emma's healing, about the family's slow recovery from trauma. And at the end, she wrote, "I don't know if redemption is possible for what he did. But I know he's trying, and I know my grandbabies are safer because he's standing at that corner. That has to count for something." Quote, "Thank you for showing me this," Marcus said, his voice rough. "Don't thank me. Thank Mrs. Rodriguez for being willing to see your humanity even after you failed to see hers. That's grace, Mr. Holloway. That's what you should aspire to. Not just avoiding harm, but actively contributing to healing. Marcus left Judge Caprio's chambers with Sophia's letter in his pocket and a sense of purpose he'd never experienced in all his years of business success. He didn't know what his future looked like. He didn't know if he could sustain this change. But he knew that when he stood at that corner Tuesday and Thursday mornings, helping children cross safely, he was doing something that mattered more than any luxury car sale ever had. Drop a comment and tell us what you think real redemption looks like, because the epilogue to this story will surprise you. 6 months later, July 2024. Marcus Holloway stood at the corner of Benefit Street and Angel Street on a warm summer morning. Not because the court required it, because he'd chosen to be there. He'd been volunteering twice a week for the past 5 months, becoming a permanent fixture at the intersection. Children waved to him. Parents nodded greetings. He'd become part of the community, no longer the wealthy outsider who'd endangered lives, but just Marcus, the crossing guard who showed up. Emma Rodriguez approached the crosswalk with her friend, chattering about summer camp. She saw Marcus and smiled, a genuine smile without fear. "Hi, Mr. Marcus." "Hi, Emma. How's camp?" Quote, "We're learning to kayak. It's really fun." Quote, "That's wonderful. You ready to cross?" Quote, "Yep." Marcus stopped traffic, and Emma crossed with confidence. No hesitation, no fear. Just a 9-year-old girl going about her day. When she reached the other side, she turned and waved. Marcus waved back, his heart full, in a way no business achievement had ever made him feel. That afternoon, Marcus attended a ribbon-cutting ceremony for the first Holloway Safe Streets initiative, a newly renovated school zone in South Providence, complete with enhanced crosswalks, traffic calming measures, and improved lighting. Dr. Foster was there. Officer Prescott was there. Thomas Chen was there. And Sophia Rodriguez was there with Emma and Lucas. Marcus gave a brief speech about the program, about the funding committed, about the lives they hoped to save. But the most powerful moment came when Sophia stepped to the microphone, unexpected and unscheduled. "6 months ago, this man nearly killed my grandbabies," she said, her voice carrying across the crowd. "I hated him. I wanted him punished. I wanted him to suffer." And he did suffer. He suffered through learning lessons he should have known all along. He suffered through seeing what his privilege and arrogance cost. But more than that, he changed. He showed up. He did the work. He didn't just complete a sentence. He transformed his life. She turned to Marcus. "I'm not saying you're forgiven. I'm not saying the harm you caused is erased. But I am saying that you took responsibility. You faced consequences. You changed. And because of that change, children in 5 cities are safer. That's redemption, Mr. Holloway. Not forgiveness, not absolution, but redemption. Keep earning it every day." The ceremony concluded with Emma and Lucas cutting the ribbon together, scissors held jointly, their small hands symbolizing the future these initiatives were designed to protect. Photographers captured the moment. News coverage spread. The viral video of Marcus saying "I own you" was replayed again, but this time with context, with the full story of transformation that followed. That evening, Marcus returned to his modest apartment and wrote in his journal, a practice he'd maintained since November. He wrote about the ceremony, about Sophia's words, about Emma's fearless crossing that morning. And he wrote about what he'd learned. "I used to measure my worth by my wealth. By the cars I drove, the watch I wore, the buildings with my name on them. I thought success meant elevation above others, separation from the common experience. I was wrong. Success is showing up. Success is protecting a child at a crosswalk. Success is earning a smile from someone you once terrified. Success is becoming someone who contributes rather than consumes. I own nothing. I am owned by nothing. I am simply responsible. To myself, to my community, to the children who trust me with their safety. And that responsibility is the only thing worth having." He closed the journal and looked at Emma's Christmas card, still on his refrigerator. Construction paper and crayon, worth more than $3.7 billion ever had been. His phone rang. His mother. They talked every week now. "How was the ceremony?" she asked. Sophia Rodriguez spoke. She called what I'm doing redemption. "Do you feel redeemed?" Quote. Marcus thought about that question. I feel like I'm becoming someone I can respect. That's enough. More than enough. That's everything. They talked for an hour about his upcoming trip to visit her, about the Holloway Safe Streets expansion, about his continued therapy, about his life. A life that looked nothing like it had a year ago. A life that was smaller, quieter, more purposeful, and infinitely more meaningful. 9 months after the viral moment, October 2024, Marcus stood in Judge Caprio's courtroom again, but this time as a guest. Judge Caprio was being honored for 40 years of service to the Providence Municipal Court. Speeches were given, awards were presented, and toward the end of the ceremony, Judge Caprio was asked if there was any case in his 40 years that stood out. He smiled. There have been many, but there's one from last year that I think about often. A case that reminded me why we have justice systems. Not for punishment, not for revenge, for accountability and opportunity, for giving people the chance to become better than they were. He didn't name Marcus. He didn't need to. Everyone in that courtroom knew the story. The video had been watched over 90 million times worldwide. But Judge Caprio's point was larger than one case. We have a choice, Judge Caprio said, in every interaction, in every case, in every moment of conflict. We can choose to write people off, to label them irredeemable, to punish without purpose. Or we can choose to hold them accountable while also holding space for transformation. That doesn't mean excusing harm. That doesn't mean ignoring consequences. It means believing that people can learn, can change, can become who they were meant to be if given the right combination of accountability and opportunity. After the ceremony, Marcus approached Judge Caprio. They shook hands. "Thank you," Marcus said simply. "Don't thank me. Thank yourself for choosing to become someone different. And thank Mrs. Rodriguez and her grandchildren for surviving your worst moment and bearing witness to your transformation." "I do. Every day." Marcus left the courthouse and walked to his car, the Honda Accord that got him from place to place without ceremony or status. He drove to Benefit Street and parked near the intersection. It wasn't his scheduled day to volunteer, but he wanted to see the place that had changed everything. Children were getting out of school, flooding the sidewalks, just as they had that September day 13 months earlier. But this time, Marcus wasn't screaming through at 63 miles per hour. He was parked, watching, seeing them as individuals. Emma Rodriguez emerged from the building, saw Marcus's car, and waved. He waved back. Sophia appeared a moment later, walking with another grandmother. She noticed Marcus, said something to her companion, and walked over to his car. Marcus rolled down the window. "You're not scheduled today," Sophia said. "I know. I just wanted to see the kids get out safely." Sophia smiled slightly. "You know what Emma said this morning? She said she wants to be a crossing guard when she grows up." Because Mr. Marcus showed her that protecting people is important. Marcus's throat tightened. "I don't know what to say to that." "Say you'll keep showing up, keep being the person who protects instead of endangers, keep proving that change is possible. Because these children, they're watching. They're learning that mistakes don't define you forever, that accountability and effort matter, that redemption is real. You're teaching them that, Mr. Holloway. Don't stop." Quote, "I won't. I promise." Sophia nodded and walked away, collecting Emma and Lucas, heading home to the life they'd rebuilt after trauma. Marcus watched them go, then drove to the community center where he volunteered Saturday mornings at the food pantry. The final scene of this story takes place 1 year after the viral moment, October 17, 2024. Marcus received an email from Judge Caprio's clerk, an invitation to speak at a judicial conference about restorative justice and accountability. The title of his proposed talk, From I Own You to I Owe You, A Journey of Accountability and Transformation. Marcus accepted. He prepared remarks about privilege, about the blindness wealth created, about the moment his worldview shattered, about learning to see people as human beings rather than obstacles. He practiced the talk with his mother, with Sophia Rodriguez, with Dr. Chen, his therapist, with Thomas Chen, refining it until it told the truth without self-aggrandizement. The conference was held in Boston. 200 judges from across New England attended. Marcus stood at the podium, more nervous than he'd ever been, closing multi-million-dollar business deals. Judge Caprio introduced him, explaining the case, the sentence, the transformation that followed. Marcus stepped to the microphone and began. 1 year ago, I stood in a courtroom and told Judge Frank Caprio that I owned him. 3 words that revealed everything wrong with who I'd become. 3 words that marked the end of one life and the beginning of another. I didn't own him. I didn't own anything or anyone. I was owned by arrogance, by entitlement, by the belief that wealth equaled worth and money could purchase immunity from consequences. Judge Caprio's sentence freed me from that ownership. And I want to share with you what I've learned in the years since, because accountability and justice aren't about punishment. They're about transformation. He spoke for 30 minutes, sharing the complete story, the near miss, the traffic stop, the hearing. The moment he said those 3 words, the sentence, the 200 hours at the crosswalk, Lily Chen, Emma's Christmas card, Sophia's grace, the ongoing work of becoming someone different. I can't undo the harm I caused, Marcus concluded. I can't give back the sense of safety I stole from 2 children and their grandmother. But I can spend every day earning the redemption they've offered. I can use my resources to make streets safer for other families. I can show up at a crosswalk twice a week and protect children, because their lives matter infinitely more than my schedule or my convenience ever did. I can tell my story so that maybe one other person who believes wealth makes them special learns before they hurt someone that we're all just human beings responsible to and for each other. That's what I owe, not to the court, to Sophia, Emma, and Lucas Rodriguez, to every child I help cross safely, to myself, because owing that debt, working to repay it every day, that's what gives life meaning, not owning, owing. The room was silent when he finished. Then one judge began clapping. Then another. Then the entire room stood in applause, not for Marcus, for the transformation, for the proof that accountability works, for the evidence that justice can change lives when it combines consequences with opportunity. After the conference, Marcus returned to Providence. He stopped at the cemetery where his father was buried. He hadn't visited since the funeral 3 years ago. He stood at the grave for a long time, thinking about the man who'd taught him to value money over everything, who'd died wealthy and miserable. I'm not you, Marcus said quietly. I almost became you. I was on that path. But I'm not you. I'm going to be someone different. Someone you probably wouldn't understand. Someone who measures worth by what I give, rather than what I take. I hope wherever you are, you found peace. I'm finding it. Finally. He left the cemetery and drove to Benefit Street. It was 3 in the afternoon, close to the time of day when everything had changed a year ago. He parked in the same place he'd been when Officer Prescott pulled him over. The new street lamp stood where the old one had been destroyed. The plaque caught the autumn light. Marcus walked to the corner where he'd volunteered for 200 hours and continued to volunteer twice weekly. He stood at the spot where he'd pulled Lily Chen to safety, where he'd helped Sophia's nephew with cerebral palsy, where Emma had waved at him that morning 6 months ago. This was where he'd learned to be human again. This was where Marcus Holloway, Billionaire CEO, had died, and Marcus, crossing guard and community member, had been born. This was where he'd learned that you don't own anything in this life. You're just temporarily responsible for making sure the next generation can cross safely to their future. He stood there until the light changed, until the street was empty, until it was just him and the intersection that had saved his life by ending it. Then he got in his Honda Accord and drove home to his modest apartment, to his journal where he'd write about this anniversary, to his life that was smaller and infinitely larger than it had ever been before. The video of Marcus saying, "I own you," still circulates online. It gets shared whenever people discuss entitled behavior, wealth inequality, or justice. But increasingly, it's paired with the rest of the story, the sentence, the transformation, the redemption, the proof that accountability works, that people can change, that justice isn't just about punishment, It's about creating the conditions for people to become better than they were. And on Tuesday and Thursday mornings, if you drive past the corner of Benefit Street and Angel Street in Providence, Rhode Island, you'll see a man in a reflective vest, holding a stop sign, helping children cross safely to school. The children call him Mr. Marcus. They don't know about the billions of dollars. They don't care about the luxury cars or the business empire. They just know that he shows up, he keeps them safe, and he never, ever drives too fast past their school. Because he learned the lesson Judge Caprio taught him. You don't own anyone. You're owned by your responsibilities. And the only thing worth having in this life is the knowledge that you showed up, you did the work, and you made someone's journey across the street a little bit safer. That's not redemption. That's just being human. Finally, if this story moved you, if it made you think about accountability, transformation, and justice differently, leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Subscribe to the channel for more real stories of how justice works when we combine consequences with compassion. Share this with someone who needs to hear that change is possible, that mistakes don't define us forever, and that the most valuable thing we can own is responsibility for making the world safer for others. Hit that notification bell because stories like Marcus Holloway's are rare, powerful, and desperately needed in a world that too often believes wealth equals worth. Thank you for watching, and remember, we don't own anyone. We owe everyone the basic dignity of being seen, being held accountable, and being given the chance to become better. That's justice. That's humanity. That's how we all learn to cross safely to wherever we're going.